The Galactic Council's chamber pulsed with soft blue light, high above the planet Koreshtal. Delegates of a dozen species hovered in floating seats, murmuring in low tones that sounded more like suspicion than strategy. "The humans have offered assistance," said Councillor Yervel, her translucent fins quivering with distaste. "Their participation would be symbolic." A few delegates nodded. The insectoid threat spreading across Koreshtal was regrettable, yes, but not alarming. Certainly not a matter that required full military response. Certainly not from humans. "They fear war," added Councillor Rothu, a crystalline being from the Tvath system. "They always have. Their history is full of it. That's why they avoid it now." From the rear, Ambassador Kunari watched in silence. Her feathers lay flat across her shoulders, a neutral sign, publicly at least. She would be on the ground to observe this. Symbolic force. Just 10 humans. A gesture. She had already dismissed them as a primitive formality. Earth's orbital marine command base, 200 clicks above sea level, buzzed with pre-deployment orders. Hard steel, red lights, the occasional echo of boots on graded floors. Inside Bay 12, Staff Sergeant Riley Voss stood motionless, staring at a frozen image on his HUD, a Martian mining outpost in flames, evac shuttles too few, too late. Civilian bodies half covered in ash. He blinked. The image vanished. "Sir?" came a voice. "Yeah," Voss said, turning to face his recon team. "You all packed?" Private Brick, 6'3" and built like his namesake, grinned. "Loaded and locked. I even brought the good coffee." Corpsman Salas rolled his eyes. "So, the expired MRE packs." "Excellent." Pruitt cleaned the lens of her sniper scope. "How hot we expecting this to get?" "Council says it's nothing," Voss replied, strapping on his chest rig. "But we're Marines." "Assume they're wrong." Corporal Dan stood at attention. New. Barely 19. Boots still clean. His hand twitched toward his pulse rifle every time someone raised their voice. Voss didn't like that. "Final check-in in 5. Dropship's waiting," Voss said, voice level. "Let's be sharp." The alien transport ship was sterile, quiet, and too clean for the job it was doing. Kunari sat in a sealed observation bay, her golden eyes narrowing as the Marines boarded. Their gear looked worn, practical. Their postures alert, but not tense. Not cowards. That part was already clear. Still, they couldn't possibly understand what they were about to face. The jungle of Koreshtal welcomed them with silence. It wasn't the peaceful kind. It was the kind that waits for something to die. The Marines hit the ground with practiced efficiency, boots sinking slightly into mossy soil, eyes scanning the thick canopy overhead. No breeze. Just the smell of rot and moisture. Visibility 50 feet max. The dropship vanished into the clouds as soon as they stepped off. "Voss, you getting anything on thermal?" asked Pruitt. He adjusted his HUD. Negative. Static interference. Probably local flora messing with our gear. "Comforting," muttered Salas. Dan's jogged to catch up, gun too tight against his chest. "I've read the Chukar combat profiles, sir. They don't fight fair." Voss interrupted. "They swarm. Fast. No prisoners." Kunari landed lightly beside them, her translator draped along her throat. "This terrain is regrettable," she said, voice clipped. "I hope your species has trained for environments like this." Voss didn't answer immediately. Instead, he motioned his squad forward. They moved silently, eyes everywhere. Then he said quietly, "We've trained for worse." 2 kilometers in, they found the first evidence of a problem. A forward council post, ripped open like a tin can. Burned walls, crushed perimeter defenses. Inside, scorched gear and a smell Voss knew too well, smoke and cooked meat. Kunari covered her beak with her feathers. "This is not what we were told." "No shit," Salas muttered. Voss crouched near a wall, running a gloved hand over blackened scorch marks. "No plasma fire," he said. "Kinetic." Claws. Teeth. Chuck AR. Brick confirmed, tapping at his sensor wrist pad. Swarm size unknown. At least a dozen breached perimeter from below. Dan swallowed audibly. Shouldn't we pull back, sir? Voss stood. Not yet. Kanari's wings twitched. You intend to push forward against protocol? I intend to find civilians, Voss replied. Then we push. They moved fast now, cutting east toward a series of settlements on council maps. The jungle closed in tighter with each step. The silence stayed. Then movement. A shimmer in the air. No sound. Then hell opened. The Chuck AR dropped from the trees in a blur of chitin and claws. No warning, no war cries. The Marines responded instantly. Pruitt fired 2 rounds, taking a drone through the neck. Brick shoulder charged another, pinning it with a steel boot and crushing its skull. But they kept coming. Kanari shrieked, diving for cover as Salas dragged her behind a downed log. Dans fired wildly, hitting one, missing 2. Form on me, Voss barked. Concentrated fire. They regrouped, firing in overlapping arcs. The Chuck AR faltered. Then one broke the line. It barreled toward the civilians hiding in a burrow nearby. Dans sprinted forward. Dans, hold. Too late. He tackled the creature off the burrow entrance, shooting point blank. One shot went wide. The second hit. The third never came. The Chuck AR's claw pierced his chest. Voss gunned it down, but Dans was already bleeding out, eyes wide and confused. I got them safe, he whispered. Then he was gone. An hour later, the squad stood over the burial site, hands folded. Voss stared down, jaw tight. Kanari watched him closely. He disobeyed. He saved lives, Voss said. She hesitated. Your tactics are disorderly. That's war, Voss replied. It doesn't care about order. Only survival. Back at their makeshift forward post, Voss laid out the map. Chuck AR movement patterns. Settlement locations. Satellite pings, uncertain, but promising. We head for Ish-10 Hollow at dawn, he said. Refugees are gathering there. We hold the line. The council will not approve, Kanari said from the corner. Voss didn't look up. They sent us for symbolism. We're giving them results. He walked outside, sat alone under the heavy trees. Rain began to fall. No symbols. No politics. Just war. And he wasn't running this time. By sunrise, the jungle had grown thicker. The air was heavy with pollen and distant thunder. Voss's squad moved quietly beneath broad, wet leaves, the tension between them unspoken but sharp. The death of Dans had settled in like fog, ever-present, clinging to every breath. Kanari followed behind, slower now. Her feathers were damp, crest low. She hadn't spoken since the burial. Movement, whispered Pruitt. Voss froze, hand raised. Brick scanned the canopy through his visor. Small thermal blips ahead. No hostiles. Looks like survivors. They crept forward to a shallow basin. 3 non-human civilians huddled beneath a downed shuttle, skin blistered, eyes wide with exhaustion. Salas moved in first, voice calm. Medical support inbound. Don't move. Voss turned to Kanari. Get their language. We need to know what hit them. She crouched beside the nearest alien, voice low and fluid. A few quick exchanges passed between them. They say the swarm came 2 nights ago. She translated. Fast. From underground. Not many escaped. Voss looked at the dirt beneath his boots. Chuck AR don't just dig, they seed. Means they're spreading tunnels. Pruitt swore under her breath. We're standing on a hive. They moved faster after that, pacing hard toward a known council checkpoint for extraction. What they found instead was a massacre. The outpost had been obliterated. Concrete walls melted down to slag. A few dozen council troops lay scattered, some bisected, some unrecognizable. The Chuck AR had made no effort to feed or cocoon them. This had been for fear. A message. Still think this is an isolated skirmish? Voss asked. Kunari didn't reply. She walked through the rubble in silence, one clawed foot after the other, gaze sweeping over the dead. Salas pulled a data core from a broken command console. Log ends 18 hours ago. Last message was a distress ping, no response. No one's coming, Brick said. They left this place to burn. Voss nodded once. We hold what we can. We're not losing another inch. Hours passed. Rain fell in sheets. As night crept in, the jungle changed. Pruitt noticed it first. No bugs. No birds. Quiet again, Voss said. Too quiet. A sharp vibration rattled through the ground, barely there, but enough to send a chill across the spine. Then the ambush hit. The Chukar didn't scream. They emerged from the earth in bursts of soil and mandibles. Half a dozen in the first wave, sprinting low and fast. One tackled Salas off his feet, another lunged for Kunari. Brick fired a shock grenade, sending the first two into spasms. Pruitt's rifle cracked 3 times, 2 headshots, one clean through the thorax. Back to the ridge! Voss yelled. High ground now! They retreated through thick roots and mud, firing in staggered rhythm. Kunari stumbled, blood trailing from her shoulder. Voss reached her. You're hit. I can move, she gasped. They're adapting. He nodded, pulling her upright. So do we. On the ridge, they formed a loose perimeter. Brick slammed down portable cover shields, humming faintly as they powered up. Pruitt set her rifle against a tree root, breathing hard. 15 hostiles, minimum, she said. That was just recon. Main force is out there. Then we dig in, Voss replied. The night stretched. Jungle noises resumed, but wrong, unnatural. Imitations of movement. The Chukar were listening. Kunari leaned against a rock, wincing as Salas patched her wound. You keep fighting when the odds say otherwise, she said, looking at Voss. Why? Because the odds don't bleed, he said. We do. Morning brought fog and silence. The Marines hadn't slept. They ate in shifts, weapons never out of reach. They moved again at first light, taking a winding path toward Ishten Hollow. The terrain thickened, steep ridges, moss-slick stones, tangled vines like tripwires. They moved slow, methodical. We're being tracked, Brick said. How many? Voss asked. All of them. By noon, they saw the first signs of Ishten Hollow, smoke curling through the trees, not from fire, but cook fires. Civilian presence. Pruitt scouted ahead, returned minutes later. Village is intact, she reported. About 80 civilians. Scared. Underarmed. Maybe 2 old plasma repeaters and a hunting rifle. They expect the council, Voss said. They got us, Brick answered. Inside the village, the air was thick with desperation. Alien families huddled together beneath makeshift shelters. Some had wounds, most had nothing at all. Kunari spoke with village elders. Their words were fast, clipped with fear. They haven't seen the council in 5 days, she told Voss. They don't believe anyone's coming. Then we show them who did. Voss called his squad together. We set defenses now. Trenches, mines, barricades. We have 3 hours until dark. That's all the time we get. No one questioned it. Brick and Pruitt marked kill zones. Salas trained villagers to identify Chukar scouts. Voss stood at the center of it all, directing with calm precision. He didn't feel calm. But that wasn't the job. Kunari approached him as the sun dipped low. You're building for a siege. They're coming. We hold them here, or no one gets out. I've misjudged your kind, she said, voice quiet. You do not fear war. No, Voss said. We hate it. That's why we win. She paused, looking at the villagers behind him. And if you fall? We don't fall, he said. We hold. The final light of the day slipped behind the treetops. The jungle went still again. Only this time, Voss welcomed the silence. Because he knew what came next. And he'd be ready for it. The jungle exhaled as the sun died. Leaves trembled under an invisible wind. From the village's outer perimeter, Brick crouched behind the barricades of scavenged crates and snapped branches, watching for movement through infrared goggles. "They're close," he said. "How close?" asked Voss, crouching beside him. Brick didn't blink. "Close enough to hear us breathe." Voss rose and moved along the defensive line. The villagers were behind the trenches, huddled together in a schoolhouse-turned-shelter. The Marines were spread thin, four left, including him. Not enough. Never enough. But they'd make it work. "Stay sharp," he called. "No lights. Fire only on my order." Pruitt was high in a sniper's nest, her rifle set to thermal. "I count 2 scouts near the south tree line. Crawling low. Learning us." "Let them," Voss replied. "They'll get their lesson." Salas was inside the shelter, doing what he could. Most of the villagers were scared. Some carried tools for weapons. One elderly alien clutched a broken plasma cutter like a talisman. "They'll panic if this turns into a rush," Salas told Voss when he returned. "We lose the line if that happens." "Then we don't let it happen," Voss said. "We hold the hollow." Kunari stood by the door. She hadn't asked to be kept safe. Her wing was still stiff from the wound, but her eyes were sharp. "Your soldiers," she said. "They seem ready to die." "No one's dying tonight," Voss said. "We're Marines. We make the other guy do that." The first wave came at midnight. No roar. No war drums. Just motion, silent and sudden. They poured from the trees, dozens of them, legs skittering across wet earth. Mandibles clacked in rhythm. The jungle seemed to vanish behind their shapes. "Contact left!" Brick shouted. "Light them!" Voss ordered. Pulse rifles lit up the night. Red flashes painted the trees. The barricades buckled under the force of impact. Chuckayars slammed into the walls, clawing and snapping. Pruitt's shots were methodical. 1, 2, 3. Heads popped. Limbs flew. "Right flank breach!" someone yelled. Salas turned from helping a wounded alien child and ran into the fray, shotgun roaring. Mud splashed. A Chuckayar fell, sliding to a stop at Voss's feet. Kunari stood at the shelter doorway, stunned. Then she moved. She bent, picked up a dead Marine's sidearm, a sleek, compact pulse pistol, and stepped into the open. A second wave followed the first. Larger. Meaner. Winged drones swooped low, dropping acid sacks. One burst near Brick, melting through his shoulder plate. He howled, falling hard. "I got him!" Salas dragged him back, fingers already moving over med foam and pain suppressors. Voss vaulted over the barricade, pulse rifle barking in tight bursts. He moved with practiced precision, down, shift, fire. He wasn't thinking anymore. Instinct carried him. A Chuckayar tackled him. They went rolling into the mud. Its breath was sulfur and blood. Voss jammed his knife under its jaw and twisted. It screeched, then stopped. He stood, panting. Blood dripped from his armor. None of it his, yet. Inside the shelter, Kunari fired twice, dropping a drone mid-dive. Her arms shook, but she didn't stop. The villagers behind her watched in stunned silence. "You fight," one whispered. She didn't answer. She simply fired again. "Ammo's low," Pruitt called from above. "They're cycling. Another wave in 60 seconds. Voss crouched by Brick. "You good?" "One arm down, but I still got teeth." Brick grinned, pale but conscious. "Hold here." "Salas status?" 3 injured. 1 bad. "Civilians still locked down." Voss nodded, then turned to Pruitt. "Fallback plan?" She pointed toward a slope on the east side. "Narrow pass. One way in. We can bottleneck them." Voss looked at the hollow. Too many wounded to move. Too little time. "We hold here." They came again. This time in silence. No skittering. No tremble. Just shadows, sliding through trees, cutting the distance in seconds. Pruitt fired first. They're trying to flank. A detonation rocked the southern line, improvised charges, buried in the mud. Limbs flew. The jungle lit up again. Voss ran through smoke, past craters and torn bodies. He grabbed a fallen Chukar shield, slammed it into a breach, and held it as a drone hammered against it. Kunari was beside him now. Her feathers were slick with blood and ash. She fired past his shoulder. "I thought your kind feared war," she said. "We remember it," Voss growled. "That's different." The swarm broke an hour before dawn. They came one final time, claws slower, formations broken. The ground was littered with their dead. Black blood soaked the roots. Voss stood at the trench, rifle out, waiting. Nothing came. Silence finally earned. He turned slowly. Pruitt slid down from her perch, limping. "Ammo's gone." Brick leaned against the wall, conscious but quiet. Salas was checking pulses, marking the fallen. Kunari lowered the pistol. Her eyes met Voss's. "They're gone," she said. "For now," he replied. "They'll come again." "But they didn't win." Voss didn't smile. He didn't even nod. He looked at the shattered village, the burned trees, the wounded aliens, and his broken squad. "We bought time. That's the job." Later, as the sun cracked the horizon, Kunari stood before the villagers. They looked at her differently now. "You live," she said, "because the humans didn't leave." She turned to Voss. "You are not symbols. You are shields. Weapons when needed. And now something more." He said nothing. He just walked toward the edge of the jungle, rifle slung low, eyes forward. War hadn't changed. But now, the galaxy would. The jungle steamed beneath a rising sun. Smoke curled from shattered trees. Burned out husks of Chukar drones lay scattered across the mud like broken armor. The air stank of acid, blood, and something else, victory, hard won and fragile. Voss sat against a tree trunk, helmet off, mud crusted over dried blood on his cheek. His rifle lay across his knees, silent but ready. His breath came slow. Pruitt limped toward him, one eye swollen shut, the other sharp as ever. "Still breathing, Staff Sergeant?" "Barely." "Hell of a night." He nodded, said nothing. Behind them, villagers moved in stunned silence. Some gathered remains of the fallen. Others reinforced barricades, though no immediate threat loomed. Brick lay propped against a wall, one arm gone from the elbow down. Salas had stabilized him with makeshift gear, what was left of the medkits, and sheer grit. "They're alive because of you," Salas said quietly, kneeling beside Voss. Voss shook his head. "Because of us." A soft hum cut through the silence overhead. "Engines. Big ones?" All eyes turned skyward as sleek metallic vessels pierced the clouds. Galactic Council warships, pristine and far too late. The lead dropship landed just outside the village wall. Dust whipped through the air. A ramp hissed open. Council forces in polished armor fanned out, cautious and clean, weapons slung casually. Their commander, a tall Arden with polished plates and an untouched uniform, approached the charred battlefield. He took one look at the scorched remains, then at Voss. "You held this ground?" he asked. "We did. With 10 soldiers?" "4 now." The commander glanced around. "This is unexpected." Voss said nothing. Kunari stepped forward, feathers dark with soot. "Unexpected?" she echoed. "You knew the Chukar were here. You knew the risks. And you sent humans as decoration." The commander stiffened. "Ambassador, this isn't the time for—" "It is exactly the time," she snapped. "I stood beside them. I saw how they fought. I bled with them. You came to survey the aftermath, they created the possibility of one." Her voice cut through the air like a blade. "These Marines weren't a symbol. They were the wall that stood when everyone else fell." Later, aboard the Council's command ship in orbit, Kunari stood before the assembly. The chamber, once dismissive, was silent now. Footage from Ish-10 Hollow played on the holoscreen, grainy, violent, raw. Marines holding the line. Civilians protected behind them. The enemy in full view. I came here to witness failure, Kunari said, her voice calm. That was the expectation. That humans would posture and collapse. That they feared war. She paused. What I saw were warriors. Not by profession alone, but in spirit. Disciplined. Ruthless when necessary. Relentless. A delegate from the Varn consortium raised a claw. You claim they should lead military actions? I claim they already have, she said. And if they had not, Koresh Tal would be gone. Another murmured. They're violent by nature. Controlled violence is not savagery, she said. It is strategy. Survival. Leadership. She turned back to the center of the hall. Respect must be earned. They've paid in blood. You will recognize that. Or you'll be the next ones begging for Marines to show up late. Silence held. Then slow, reluctant nods. The council record updated. Earth status elevated. Military authority, provisional combat leadership, sector-wide. Back on the surface, Voss sat near the same tree where he'd waited the night before. A transport shuttle loomed nearby, its bay open and clean. Pruitt stood beside him, her sling tight around her ribs. Council says we're getting medals? Voss snorted. For what? For surviving. He didn't respond. Kunari approached, holding something wrapped in cloth. She knelt and placed it beside him. Danza's medal, she said. The villagers asked me to give it to you. Voss looked at it, fingers brushing the surface. Bronze scorched, but intact. He wasn't ready. Voss murmured. He still went. Courage isn't always polished, she said. Sometimes it's messy. Loud. Bleeding. But it's still courage. He stood, bones protesting. They'll be back. The Chukar. Stronger next time. Then we'll be ready. He eyed her. You sound like a Marine. She smiled faintly. Just a witness. He nodded once. That's enough. As the shuttle lifted off, leaving Koresh Tel behind, Voss looked down at the village, small, quiet, scarred but standing. Smoke no longer rose in anger, but from cook fires, normal again. Salas, beside him, leaned back against the seat. You think the council really gets it now? They don't need to, Voss replied. The Chukar do. Pruitt smirked. That's the real message, huh? Voss looked out the window. The jungle faded beneath them. We came as a symbol, he said. Now we're a warning. Deep below the surface, in a chamber lit by bioluminescent veins, overmined Zaltesh brooded. A smaller drone clicked nervously. Our swarms failed at Koresh Tal. Zaltesh turned slowly. Because we underestimated prey that remembers how to bite. A projection shimmered in the air, footage from the battle, Voss at the barricade, Marines holding the line. Adapt, Zaltesh hissed. Next time they fall. But deep in his voice, for the first time, was the faintest edge of caution. A new Marine deployment board flashes. Koresh Tal, stabilized. Next location, classified. Personnel, USMC, Lead Assault Force. Staff Sergeant Voss's name appears at the top of the list. Below it, the same motto, burned into the screen. No better friend. No worse enemy.